How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. We are chatting about politics today. So if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to start to learn about it. And so I like to make myself available to answer all of your questions. It can sometimes feel like trying to learn a new language where, people just refer to certain politicians or people in the news sphere just by their last names. So like maybe you don't know necessarily who that person is. Thanks for joining my team, Hugo. Maybe we're talking about things that you don't know what they are, like reconciliation or continuing resolutions or the filibuster and stuff like that. And you don't want to seem uninformed, so you just don't know who to ask about that sort of stuff. And that is what I am doing here. Dear Merwork says, "What do you know about politics?" Lots of things. My expertise is in American politics because I'm an American, but I know a little bit about foreign affairs also. If that is what you are interested in learning about, just ask me the question. So yeah, there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. This isn't one of those shows where people come on and I tell them how wrong they are and yell at them and stuff like that. I'm just here to answer your good faith questions about politics. Daphne says, "Will Trump be impeached?" So currently, Trump is not going to be impeached because Republicans have control of Congress. Republicans 100% should be impeaching Donald Trump because he has done wildly illegal and unconstitutional things since he's been in office, both in his first term and already in his second term, even though it's only been a couple of months. The problem is that the Republican Party does not have any sort of, I don't know, I guess, loyalty to the Constitution. Their loyalty is to their party, their loyalty is to the billionaire class, their loyalty is to Donald Trump. And so, even though it is their job to impeach Trump right now, they're not going to do it. If the Democrats win in the midterm elections in 2026, then we 100% can and should impeach Donald Trump at that point. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Everything About Anything About Politics. There's no roasting here. There's no judgments. There's no debating. I'm not going to yell at you for having different opinions than me. So long as you ask a question, I will answer your question in good faith. Let's see here. Boosty McKirk says, "How long have you been gay?" I'm not gay, and your mom knows all about that. Let's see here. Durr says, "Ask a leftist." I mean, I am a leftist, but I will answer your questions and they will be honest answers. So just because I'm a leftist doesn't discredit the things that I say, just the same way that somebody being Republican doesn't discredit the things that they say. Let's see here. Billy says, I don't know who. Oh, Letitia James. Do I think Letitia James is guilty? No, I don't. I haven't heard anything about anything she did wrong except for hook up with somebody in her office, which fucking who amongst us? You know what I mean? Let's see here. So a very attractive lady named Kirsten said it's raining in Los Angeles. That's pretty cool. William says, "Are you a liberal?" Yes, I am. Unam says, "What do you call a Democrat that isn't far left but isn't conservative either?" I guess you would call them a centrist. Jose Galvan says, "Do you think economically we are so far gone that this extreme cuts are necessary?" So no, the cuts that the Trump administration are doing are not necessary. In fact, they are bad. They are bad for America. They are bad for the 99%. The only people that they help are extremely rich people like Donald Trump and, you know, people in adversarial nations like Russia and shit like that. Like, they're really good for Putin. Like, all these cuts are really good for Putin. If we're trying to actually solve any sort of like debt or deficit issue, there are, loopholes for massive corporations. There are subsidies for massive corporations. There are tax cuts for billionaires that we could get rid of. There are a lot of ways to solve that without gutting like Meals on Wheels and, not helping children with AIDS anymore and shit like that. All right, scrolling down to the bottom says Novastar, "Is this guy left or right?" This guy is left. Gary says 8 of the 10 richest people in America voted Democrat. Don't let him fool you. So Gary, that is a right-wing propaganda talking point, and it is inaccurate. You don't know who the richest people in America voted for. You can only know, even and only to a limited extent, who they gave money to. And based on the reporting that we have seen, 75% of all billionaire donations went to Republican Party candidates in 2024. So I don't know if you are here to spread misinformation or if you just got tricked by misinformation, but what you just said was inaccurate. Additionally, it makes sense that billionaires would want to fund the Republican Party instead of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party has a platform that takes money away from the billionaire class by giving workers protections and insisting that their companies, don't pollute our water and our air and shit like that. The Republican platform, by contrast, cuts all those regulations. So we are all in danger of mercury poisoning and lead poisoning because those regulations are gone. And the billionaires will pay less taxes, so we will have less money to fund the government. So yeah, if you were a billionaire who wanted to keep all of your money, you would rather have a Republican politician, and that's the reason why they mostly help Republican politicians get elected. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Okay, Gary, you're not asking a question, so you are out of here. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, everybody, but just ask a question, be part of the conversation. What's going on, everybody? My name is Jarrett. I answer questions about politics. I am not here to roast anybody or debate anybody. I am just here to answer good faith questions about politics. Let's see here. And you can double check everything that I'm telling you guys. It is all accurate. Nacho Business says, what are three politicians you'd like to see in a three-way? I'm not answering that. Eric Bjork says, what's one thing you agree with that your party doesn't agree with? I'm not really sure. The Democratic Party is a pretty wide tent, so even if I have more progressive views than the centrist Democrats, there are a lot of things that we agree on in the platform. So, like, it's all in the platform, even if it's not, something that the centrist Democrats or the progressive Democrats might agree with. Let's see here. You just said basically he opposes Trump without thinking. That is not accurate, and also that's not a question. So you are out of here. Again, guys, I don't care if you have different opinions than me. If you're a MAGA person, great, welcome. Just ask a question, be part of the conversation. Melinda says, why does Newsom make California look so great when it's not? California is great, and there's another creator on here named Nick Powers who digs into all the data about like what states are the best to live in as far as like education outcomes and quality of life outcomes and things like that. And blue states like California fucking dominate. And that's part of the reason why they're so expensive to live there. Let's see here. Something Wrong says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. Nicholas says, do you like men participating in women's sports? I have absolutely no preference about who plays in whose sports. And so if you are trying to say that because I'm a Democrat, I like it when men play in women's sports, that is inaccurate. I don't care. I just think that if you are a trans person, that you should be able to play sports. And I don't care what league you play in. Let's see here. Danny Aaron Luiken says, what is the influence of religion in politics? So there is a very strong Christian right-wing movement in American politics where these faith leaders will try to influence their followers to vote for conservative candidates because for one reason or another, there's kind of like a myriad of motivations there, including just being a gateway to more political power, which is something that these people find very attractive. And yeah, I don't think that it's a positive influence. We have a doctrine of separation between church and state in this country that the Republican Party does not seem keen on adhering to. And it is one of many reasons why I think people should never vote for the Republican Party. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, it says, Dr. Trixie says, what's your opinion on Christian leftists? That's kind of a wide category, but I would say that generally the left believes in the things that Jesus Christ believed in, like healing the sick and feeding the hungry and clothing the poor and housing the unhoused and shit like that. So yeah, I would say that Christian leftists are the only true Christians. Christiona says, do Dems have any chance to win midterm elections? They do. I would say that polling makes it look like the House is a pretty good lock. The Senate is a little bit harder. But this is like one of my mainstays in this channel is talking about how people can affect those outcomes. Like, the amount of work that we do as citizens can change the outcome of the midterm elections. So whether Democrats take the House, the Senate, get all 67 seats in the Senate, or don't win any seats at all, is entirely up to how much work people like you and me do. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Here for fun says with Democrat House, literally nothing will get done the remaining 2 years. That is inaccurate. Even if no bills can get passed, there are still things that the House can do, even in a divided government. Now, the sort of like ideal of divided government is that the parties work together and come to agreements and do compromises and shit like that. And we saw that during the Biden administration. The Biden administration had a bipartisan infrastructure bill, bipartisan gun control bill. The PACT Act and the CHIPS Act were both passed with Republicans. But the Republican Party, when they're in charge, they have a very I'm taking my ball and going home attitude, where if you don't do exactly what they say, then they will shut down the government and hurt, untold millions of Americans just because they didn't get what they wanted. And that is one of a million reasons why I tell people that they should never vote for Republicans ever. Scrolling down the bottom, Jesse Martinez says, do you support the high-speed train? I don't. It costs too much. I do support high-speed rail. High-speed rail is a transformative technology. It is extremely safe. It is extremely green. It is a wonderful option for people that don't want to travel through air. Our airline industry right now is in a very precarious place where it requires a lot of subsidization through the federal government. And this is at a time when Doge and Donald Trump are cutting funding for these agencies. So it is currently less safe to fly than it was in the past. And that is extremely worrisome, and if you want to get from California to New York, like that's really your only option. And high-speed rail could make that a much more feasible possibility where, you could take a train from, New York to Chicago in 3 hours, as opposed to, I think right now, the shortest train to get from New York to Chicago is like 24 hours or something like that. It's one of those things that, yeah, you spend a lot of money right now, but you get a lot out of it in the future. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Steak and Grit says, few Democrats pay taxes. Why should we listen to them? I do not believe that that is accurate, Steak and Grits. As far as I know, the only demographic that does not pay their fair share in taxes, and they use a lot of loopholes and cheating, is the billionaire class. And they tend to support the Republican Party. So if anybody doesn't pay their taxes, it's the Republican Party. Let's see here. Unanimous MVP for worst President Biden. That is not accurate, and also that's not a question, so you are out of here. So yeah, everybody, just let you know, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but just ask a question, be part of the conversation. If not, I'll boot you out of here, not because you have different opinions than me, but just because you're spreading misinformation and propaganda. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Duck, that is a block. Congratulations. Okay, scrolling down the bottom. Let's see here. The highest paying taxpayer on record is Elon. Cosmic Gizmos, that's one way of viewing that, but another way is viewing that he pays like 1%. And, whereas people like you and I pay 30%. Now, because he is a 200 billionaire, that means that his 1% is more than any other American, but that also does not mean that it is fair that he's only paying that amount of money. All right, that person is just being mean, so that's a block. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom. MAGA25 says, why do Democrat men, all right, MAGA25, that is a block as well. Congratulations. Let's see here. Joseph says, who decides what is misinformation? So at the moment, we don't have any sort of like unified organization that decides what is and what isn't misinformation. You can use platforms like PolitiFact or I think there's another one, I can't remember the name of it though, to try to, Snopes, to try to figure out like what is true and what is not. But the best method is to just be informed and get your news from a variety of sources. All the data suggests that right-wing media is extremely inaccurate, and the people who get their information from right-wing media do not have an accurate view of what is going on in the world. Additionally, if you only get your news from social media, then you also are generally more uninformed than or misinformed than a person who reads the news from other sources. So yeah, my shorthand for like what is true and what is not true goes down to two basic principles, which is climate change and trickle-down economics. The Republican Party says that climate change isn't real, and they say that trickle-down economics is the best fiscal policy. But we can use our own eyeballs to see that those things are not true. So if the Republican Party is lying about two things that we can see obviously are not true just with our own eyes, then what else are they lying about, you know? Eric says, "Oh yes, right wing is bad." Yeah, it is. Dr. Fanboy says, "What are your thoughts on the Democratic Party going further to the left? More Bernie AOC ish tickets moving forward." So I align more with the progressive far left wing of the Democratic Party. I think that the centrist wing of the Democratic Party is still better than the Republican Party. But if I had my druthers, you know, like we would have policies that mirror things like what AOC says and what Bernie Sanders says. Now, not everybody in the country agrees with me, and that's another reason why I think the Democratic Party is great, is because it is a big tent. And so, you know, you have people who are much closer in political ideology to Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, and you have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. And, you know, we are in a perfect world all working together to try to make the country better and try to make everybody's lives easier. And I mean, we saw a lot of that during the Biden administration. So, you know, there is hard evidence that the Democratic Party can and has done that. But yeah, you know, I'm not going to insist that everybody in the party pass my purity tests about what is good policy and what is bad policy. And I think that it is unproductive to expect your politicians or your party to mirror your beliefs exactly. Especially when the entire point of your party is that it mirrors the diversity of America, be it in age, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, and political ideology. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. G says 21%. Are you talking about the percentage of people that voted for Trump to be president? Steak and Grit says, would you vote for Biden again? So, Biden was nowhere near my favorite, you know, presidential candidate going into 2020. But, you know, we have to give him credit for being an incredible president. Like the things that he did, compromises that he effectuated, you know, like the fact that he was able to get Republicans to vote for an infrastructure bill and a gun control bill, like those things are unbelievable in addition to being transformational. Would I vote for Biden again in an open primary with a bunch of other Democratic candidates? No. Against any Republican, 100% yes. I would vote for Biden's dusty old bones over any Republican because, again, the Republicans are still saying trickle-down economics is the move. And, you know, the rich have never been richer. We have worse income inequality now than we had even during the Gilded Age, which was a period of time that we literally named after how bad the income inequality was. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Joseph says that makes you immature. No, that makes me a person who is seeing things the way that they are, and that is not a question, so you are blocked. Melinda says, do you think Biden, Obama, and Clinton are corrupt? I do not. Clinton, I don't know that as much about like what Clinton was up to. There were a bunch of things that Bill Clinton did that I do not agree with. But I don't know anything about like his business dealings and things like that. As far as like Biden and Obama are concerned, the Republican Party investigated both of those politicians to fucking death. Every inch of those fucking dudes' buttholes were examined and double examined and triple examined, and they were not able to find a single shred of evidence to show that Biden or Obama were corrupt. And so I am going to trust the Republicans who did these investigations that showed that there was no evidence to indict or impeach Barack Obama or Joe Biden. Scrolling down to the bottom, says opinions on Obama and Libya. I don't have enough of an expertise in that to comment on. So sorry, post-punk freak. Alrighty. Thumbot says, would you admit you are giving your opinion, not facts? No. When I give my opinion, I will let you know it is my opinion. But every other time that I'm saying something, it is a fact that you guys can double check if you want. Google is free. Y'all have the same Google available to you that I do. B Money says, keep making it worse for the Dems and libtards. Every live you do just loses more and more voters. That's inaccurate. It's also not a question. And so you are out of here. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? G says, Jarrett, does your boyfriend know you're live? I don't have a boyfriend, but your mom knows that I'm live. Tyro Pillar says, Jarrett, my internal clock is broken now. Thanks. I'm on the road, Tyro. You were warned. You knew about this. You knew this was coming. Tishy says, you got some weird MAGAs in here today. Yeah, well, you know, My advice is recognize that most of these people are not real. A lot of these people are AI bots. A lot of these people are Russian troll farm people. And even if they are real people, they were probably, tricked by AI bots or Russian troll bots. And so what we are looking for are people to activate. We're looking for the 85 million people who did not vote in 2024 who could have voted. We are looking for people who think that both parties are the same. We are looking for people who are centrists and maybe vote one way or the other. We're trying to make them into consistent Democratic voters instead of, being independents who sometimes vote for Republicans. We are trying to inform people and make sure that they know what is going on in this country and make sure that people aren't stuck in some sort of propaganda, rabbit hole and shit like that. So, we're not here to fight these, AI chatbots. It's completely unproductive. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the comments. Cosmic Gizmo says, do you think it's appropriate for the Dems put forward a candidate no one voted for? So Cosmic Gizmos, I find that comment to be a little sus, honestly. And I'll tell you why. Because Kamala Harris, there are a million reasons why it was the right thing to do to make Kamala Harris the nominee in 2024. If you want to blame anybody for there not being a primary after Biden dropped out, blame the Republican Party. Because they were saying to the Democratic Party, you have to give us the name of your nominee before your convention. Otherwise, we're going to leave their name off of the ballot in Ohio. And I think there was another swing state, I can't remember which one. And so the Republican Party was playing hardball. They were saying, decide on your nominee right now. We're not going to give you the time to even have a convention primary. That's just one of a million reasons, Cosmic Gizmo. So if you're a real person who this information is new to, I will 100% engage with you and talk to you about this. But, if I'm being real, everybody who brings that up has always been somebody who is a right-wing ideologue who is just trying to make it seem like the Democratic Party is worse than it actually is. But, engage with me, Cosmic. Prove me wrong. Prove that you are a real person who can take in new information. Just so you're aware, if the Republicans put forward someone without a candidate, you'd lose it. Just so you're telling me how I would feel about that? You're right. Yeah, you're not here in good faith, Cosmic Gizmos. You're out of here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Yeah, boy, oh boy, that's one of the best blocks I've ever had. That person I just blocked before. Just the last thing he said was, "Trust me, I'm real. Your information isn't." Oh, cool. Cool. Answer my questions about whether or not you were good faith or not. Patty Benjamin says, "Oh no, primary low is Republicans' fault. I am OMG. She told him to hurry to endorse her. Oh, I am real. You are not." Patty Benjamin, that is not a question. And also, your spelling is atrocious, so you are out of here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Betty says, we did vote for her when we voted for Biden. Exactly, Betty. That is one of 1,000 reasons why the Harris nomination was perfectly valid. Don Zindavajas say, it's just so scary. I thought this country was moving forwards. Well, Don, it is the goal of the billionaire class to make sure that the country does not move forward. We have boatloads of evidence that the billionaire class has been manipulating our information environment, both in mainstream media and in social media, in order to push narratives that elect Republicans and don't elect Democrats. They are pushing narratives that convince people that both parties are the same, or that the Democratic Party is worse than it is, or the Republican Party is better than it is. What they want is people to vote for Republicans or not vote at all. And so they flood the zone with all these different narratives to try to convince people to do one of those two things. And it's been very effective. It's been extremely effective. They have a lot of money and they have a lot of power and influence, and they have been able to make that happen. And so it is up to people like you and me to correct that misinformation, to correct those narratives to the people that we know in our life. Make sure that your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that you love and care about and that care about you, make sure that they're not stuck in some propaganda rabbit hole. Make sure that they know that the parties are not the same. Make sure that they know that Democratic outcomes are better than Republican outcomes. Make sure that they know what the Republican Party is up to, where they are dismantling the government to the detriment of the 99%, to appease the billionaire class. That's just really important. And it's the work that real people like me and you have to do in real life. Let's see here. Kenneth, I don't know who that is. like talking 12 million people out of voting for Kamala Harris because she was not left enough on Palestine, Gaza. Yeah, exactly, Mateo Senor. The propaganda narratives around Gaza were extremely powerful because they were based in fact. It is true that the Biden administration should not have continued to send money and weapons to Israel after they had been found to be guilty of war crimes against the people of Palestine. And while Kamala Harris signaled that she would be better on this issue than Biden, that was not good enough for the progressive wing because the billionaire class convinced them that Trump would be a better option than even Kamala Harris or Biden, or that not voting would send a message to the party that we want them to be better on Palestine. And people bought those lies. They believed them, and this is part of the reason why I always tell people like not to throw shade at right-wing voters for falling for propaganda, because there are plenty of left-wing voters who fell for the propaganda. There are plenty of people in the swing states who believed the lies that the right were telling them about the Democratic Party. They believed that not voting was like a good protest move, or that Trump would be better on Palestine than the Democrats would be, So yeah, Republicans do not have a monopoly on getting conned, unfortunately. Old Cheer says only reason some of those red states exist is because of Democratic programs and taxes helping them. That is accurate. Michelle says most people aren't even as informed as they think they are. There's so much misinformation. Also agree with that. That's why we got to do the work, Michelle. That's why we got to talk to people in real life. Randy Sandwiches, how can you support a party that lied about Biden? I don't know what you're talking about, Randy Sandwiches. There is no evidence that the Democratic Party hid any information about Biden being too old to work, or was incapable, or enfeebled, or had suffering from dementia, or anything like that. And it was the Democratic Party that put pressure on him to drop out in the 2024 election. So they were clearly not fine with a less capable Biden entering into that election. So I don't really see that argument. And frankly, Randy Sandwiches, like, it seems like if that is something that you believe, then you have bought into some misinformation. Alrighty, scrolling up a little bit. Dale says it is true that Democratic Party is responsible for all political propaganda. That is not true, Dale, and that is not a question. So you are out of here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Randy Sandwiches says Kamala said he was fine. He wasn't. Well, she thought he was fine. That is not proof of a lie, Randy Sandwiches. Also, that's not a question. That is your second strike, and so either ask a question or you will be removed. Amy says the misinformation on social service benefits is insane. Yeah, completely agree with that. David P908 says, what is your opinion on China tariffs? So it is the dumbest move in the world that the Trump administration is starting a trade war, not only with China, but with the rest of the world at the same time. Because number one, the Chinese government does not suffer from political pressure the way that the American government does, because Xi Jinping has declared himself president for life. So he doesn't have to worry about elections. The Chinese Communist Party does not have to worry about elections. So they can, their citizens can suffer through any sort of trade war better than American citizens can. That's number one. But number two is the fact that he's doing a trade war against every other country at the same time also means that every country can then unite with China against America. And we're seeing that already. Like South Korea, Japan, and China are talking about how to counter America's tariffs together. And these are three countries that typically do not work well together, but they're saying like, hey, we got to put our differences aside here to fight against America, which is only going to be worse for American citizens, and Europe is involved in these conversations as well. It's Africa is involved in these conversations. It's fucking terrifying, man. It's stupid. Let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. Knit Twist says, why does the U.S. think their government is the best when it clearly isn't? I'm not really sure where you're getting that data. I don't know anybody who thinks that the American government is the best. The Republicans don't like the government because it's the government, and Democrats don't like the government because it does things like cut taxes for billionaires and subsidies for Walmart and shit like that. So yeah, I don't know anybody who says that. Sorry for Tomorrow says, how do we get more people out to physically protest and not just online? We got to talk to people in real life. Sorry for Tomorrow. That is the only way to do it. If you can make a video and put it on TikTok, but it's going to get drowned out by all of the propaganda that the billionaire class is putting forward. So just talking to people in real life, that is the move. And recruiting people in real life. So you talk to all your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that love and care about you, and make sure that they are not in the propaganda channels. Make sure that they have an accurate idea of what's going on. Make sure that they're activated and organized. Great. Now recruit them and say, all right, now you talk to all your friends and family and neighbors and coworkers and the people that love and care about you, and you do that. And we can fucking phone tree this all across America so that we can fucking wake this population up to the bullshittery of the Republican Party, of the Trump administration, of how Doge and the billionaire class are just fucking stealing our money and fucking us all over and poisoning us with pollution in our air, in our water, in our food, etc. Yeah, and then hopefully that will be the way that we counter the billionaire propaganda networks. Because the one advantage that we have is that there are a lot more of us than there are of them. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, Tyro Pillar says, I know you don't like making predictions, but what are your thoughts on Trump approval rating? Do you think support will ever dissipate, or is the Kool-Aid too strong? So I think that the way that the electorate moves is like 1 to 2% of the voting population. When we see the effectiveness of billionaire and Republican propaganda, what we're seeing is a vote share move of like 1 to 2% in necessary states or necessary demographics. And so things don't need to move that much in order for there to be like massive electoral consequences. So the approval rating that Trump is suffering from right now, if the election were held today, then yeah, I do think that there would be electoral consequences to that. But there are two problems with just expecting the approval rating to solve all of our electoral problems. Number one is the Republican Party is doggedly going after any and all voter suppression tactics. The SAVE Act is an example, but it's much more sinister and endemic than we even recognize, how they manage to rig the game in order to win elections, in addition to lying. So that's number one. Number two is that Americans have a very short attention span, and the people who are pissed off about tariffs today, we have no idea how they're going to feel in 2026 or 2028. So yeah, I would say that let's not expect any of the bullshit, corruption, or incompetence of the Trump administration to do that work for us. Because we saw during COVID that it almost didn't work. Like we all did the work, and we all saw with our own eyes the unbelievable fuck up of the Trump administration during COVID. And Biden still only won that election by 40,000 votes. And we had a 0-seat majority in the Senate. It should have been more, just based on how bad of a job Trump and Republicans did from 2016 to 2020. All right, let's see here. All right, Terry says, why is Trump cutting farmers' money, refusing FEMA to states in need, etc., tax cuts for the wealthy? So it's a little complicated, Terry, but I'll say this. The short version is that the billionaire class in the Republican Party that is working in league with them, they want us all to be suffering. They want us all to be desperate. They want us all to be having a hard time. Because when we have a hard time, we are only focused on surviving, and we are not focused on things like political organizing or protesting or getting an education and trying to better our lives. They want there to be massive income inequality, and also for all of us to be cemented into the classes that we are born into. So if you're poor, there's no way for you to become rich. And if you're rich, there's no way to become poor. They want an aristocracy, like in fucking medieval times, where, we're all just serfs tilling the land for them while they fucking eat, goose and caviar for fucking 3 meals a day. So even if they are red states, even if they are people that voted for Trump, even if they are potentially voters that they might need in the future, they don't care. Because if they can hurt us and make us desperate enough, then fewer of us will be able to vote because we'll just be too busy surviving, and fewer of us will be able to read the news and figure out exactly what's going on in the world and who's to blame for the reason why we are struggling. Because I guarantee you there are a lot of people out there who are being hurt by the Trump administration who right-wing propaganda and billionaire propaganda is convincing them that the reason why they're struggling is because of immigrants and trans kids. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. This person just said Trump 2028. That is a block. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, you know, be part of the conversation. User a bunch of numbers says, what do you think about Israel? The people of Israel, I'm sure, are great. It is the right-wing Netanyahu government of Israel that I have a problem with. They are extremely corrupt. They are extreme ideologues. They seem to be trying to annex all of Palestine and ethnically cleanse that land. And that is illegal and morally bankrupt, unconscionable. So yeah, I would hope that the people of Israel are activated enough to get rid of Netanyahu, fucking send him to jail where he belongs, and maybe elect somebody who's actually going to enact a two-state solution and not treat the people of Palestine like they're second-class citizens. Rhonda Owen says, what is your favorite MAGA meltdown talking point? Honestly, Rhonda, it's a fun question, but I don't really have one. What I'm trying to do on this live is try to be a little bit more sober and sincere, as opposed to like taking pot shots at other people who are in the 99%. I'm trying to get people to recognize who the real enemy is, and it's not the rest of us. It's not a poor farmer who votes for Trump. It is fucking Ben Shapiro's and Elon Musk's and Donald Trump's. It's the billionaire class who are fucking stomping on our necks, turning the screws, making us all struggle so hard to fucking survive when they're eating caviar 3 meals a day and taking private jets to one of their 10 fucking mega mansions. All right, Michelle says, personally, how do you prevent yourself from being burnt out with all the news at the moment? That is 100% a valid question, Michelle. So the same way that we need to look at all the work that's to be done and realize that we don't have to do it all. We just have to get other people to do the work as well. So if you're talking to people in real life and you are organizing and recruiting, then you don't have to do everything. Like I had somebody talking to me after the show in Omaha about how, that they watch my live streams, and they were like, yeah, I feel really bad because my mom is MAGA, and instead of trying to convince her to not be, I just cut her out of my life. And I was like, listen, man, maybe that's the move. Maybe the move is not to waste your time with that, and instead to, push people who are closer to being Democrats than somebody who's MAGA, So yeah, it's about choosing your fights, and it's also about self-care, like that's my specialty, like I'm on the road right now. We got the day off today. And, while other people are, trying to do open mics or get guest spots or shit like that, I'm going to, watch a bunch of fucking TV. I'm going to catch up on Andor. I'm going to watch some dumb movies. I'm going to get myself a fucking Chipotle for dinner. That shit is part of the fight. Taking care of yourself is part of the fight, Michelle. All right. Thank you for your question. Rowan says, cutting your mom off over politics. Rowan, I'm not going to tell somebody that they have to keep a toxic person in their life. I also don't think that you should be taking that lightly. I see you laughing at that, but it means something. It means something when somebody that you love and care about thinks that you should die because of, what your sexual orientation is, or they think that your wife should be deported to a concentration camp in El Salvador without any kind of a trial, without ever having done anything wrong. If my mom did that, then I would 100% cut her out of my life. So, you can do laughy emotions, but the fact of the matter is, like, this shit is really serious. And, it's not just quote unquote politics. It's not a difference of opinion. Like, these are people's lives. These are, there's a dude right now, there's a child right now whose father is in a concentration camp in El Salvador because of an administrative error. And the Trump administration is not doing anything to try to get him back, even though the Supreme Court told them that they have to. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were caused by Trump and the Republican Party. So this shit has real consequences. Similarly, there are people who are alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, and that's only possible because people voted for Democrats and Obama. So yeah, you can make as many laughing faces as you want. I'm not going to yell at you or get into a fight with you. I just think that you're wrong, man. I think this stuff is really serious. Let's see here. Rocky May says, how are the Dems going to win back the White House, the white voters? They haven't won it since 1964. So Rocky Mays, this is a really big question, and I think it has to do with everything surrounding Democratic messaging. I think the Democrats get a bad rap for being quote unquote bad at messaging, but anybody's bad at messaging if all of the media environment, including social media, is weaponized into turning Democratic messaging into bad messaging. I'm not saying the Democratic Party is the best at messaging. I just think they're better than people give them credit for. Everybody was yelling about the things that they didn't see Kamala Harris talking about during the 2024 election, and that's why she lost. But I was watching that race, and I saw her say all that shit. And the reason why people didn't hear it was because they were getting the news off of social media, and social media is weaponized against the Democratic Party. So how do we win back the white voters? The same way that we do fucking everything. In person, and we do it. We don't just sit around and wait for the Democratic Party to do it because, again, they're playing a game that's rigged against them. They do not have the resources available to them that the Republican Party does. The Republican Party is working with Russia, with an adversarial nation, to win our American elections. Vladimir Putin is maybe the richest person in the world right now, and he is helping Republicans get elected. Even if we individuals gave all of our money to the Democratic Party, they could not fight against that. So we do the work. How does the Democratic Party win back the white voters? We convince other white people to vote for them. We make sure that our white friends and family and neighbors and coworkers and the people that love and care about us have an accurate view of what is going on, have an accurate view of the political parties, of the outcomes that happen when certain politicians are in charge, and that they are activated to vote. And it's as easy as convincing somebody that both parties aren't the same. There are a lot of really cynical people out there who either don't vote or, they sometimes vote Republican or sometimes vote Democrat because they've bought into this lie that the parties are basically the same. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Tyro Pillar says, don't forget Charlie Kirk and right-wing podcasters backed by big money are the opposition as well. Yeah, completely agree with that. Fucking Tim Pool was getting paid by Russia to spread misinformation in this country. Reality Check says, why did China order their people to leave Israel immediately? I don't know anything about that. BB Fan, good to see you again. Do you think the Supreme Court will address the Wisconsin judge getting arrested? I don't know. I am not a legal expert. I read an article about that this morning, but I was not able to see, I've heard some people say that the case is really thin. I think the most cogent argument against what the FBI did was they did not need to arrest those judges. They could have indicted them. Instead, they could have just brought charges against them. But it was a fucking straight up harassment and intimidation tactic to fucking, put them in cuffs and put them in the back of a fucking car, instead of just indicting them. So yeah, as far as if it's a strong case or not, I don't know. Will it go all the way up to the Supreme Court? I've got no fucking idea. I have got to wait to listen to the Strict Scrutiny podcast so that I can hear actual legal experts explain the validity or lack thereof of the case, and whether or not it is going to actually work its way up the judicial system. Rhonda Owen says, should Dems back a Bernie AOC 2028? So two things about that, Rhonda. Number one, the Democratic Party is going to do what the Democratic Party does. Sometimes they put their finger on the scale for centrists. I think usually they do. But that is not going to change the fact that there will be a primary, and the voters will be the ones that decide who the nominee is going to be. That's number one. Number two is I always punt on questions about the 2028 election because I want people laser focused on 2026. I want people laser focused on fucking running the table for the midterms. There are 67 seats that we could be getting in the Senate. And while that is statistically very unlikely that we will do that, it's not impossible. When pollsters say that that's impossible, what they mean is it is extremely unlikely that people will do the amount of work necessary to win those seats. And I'm saying, why don't we aim for that? Why do we aim for doing that amount of work? Why don't we aim for activating and recruiting that number of people to do that work? All right, let's see here. Olorin the Red says, well, they are both capitalist. Research has shown that capital has more pull than people in each. Yes, that is true, Olorin the Red, but that is one metric. And it is an example of how you can cherry pick data to prove whatever point you want. But here's the thing. I can go on for hours about real substantive differences between things that have happened under Democratic administrations and under Republican administrations. Things that have helped the 99%, things that have hurt the 9%. Giveaways to the billionaire class, making healthcare more affordable, making the government work better, making the government work for the people. And it is so night and day. But if you just look at that one piece of data, yeah, it does look like the parties are the same. But you have to look at everything. You have to have a much more holistic view of things. Ola in the red. And if you want me to go into more details, I 100% will. Like I came prepared. I got receipts up here. I just don't want to waste my time with somebody who's just going to call me a cuck. I don't know, because this is my first comment of yours that I'm seeing, so I don't know if you're, here in good faith or not. Alrighty. Stoner Punk says, your thoughts on Bernie Sanders? I like Bernie Sanders a lot. I am definitely more aligned with his political ideology than the centrist wing of the what do you call it, of the Democratic Party. I was gunning for Elizabeth Warren in 2020, but when she dropped out, I switched to Bernie, and when he dropped out, I switched to Biden. Nobo de Elsa says, how mean should we be to Trump voters? I don't think you should be mean to Trump voters at all. I think that you should be nice, even if they are mean to you. I think you should turn the other cheek. And I think that we need to do the work of convincing. And when we fight other voters, the billionaire class wins. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Rhonda Owen says, is the LGBTQ community hurting Dems, and how do they separate themselves? I do not think that the LGBT community is hurting the Democratic Party. They are part of the coalition. Gigi says, how do we convince people why government should never be run like a business? I would say, I would say that the problem with business is that the motive is profit. And the thing that's good about the government is the motive is people. And so you should 100% you need to have a government to protect people from the excesses of government, of business. And, there are great examples of this, like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, the entire book, The Asphalt Jungle by, is The Asphalt Jungle by Upton Sinclair, just any book about how businesses will fuck you over if the government is not there to force them to not fuck you over. Cregan says, pro-capitalist, but with accountability and preventing corporate oligarchy. That seems all right to me. I'm not mad at that. Alrighty. Okay. Ola in the red says, why would I call you that? LOL. I just think the Democratic Party needs to be disciplined by us. Ola in the red. So the reason why I said that is because sometimes people ask a question and then they just want to get into a fight because they are a MAGA person or they are a Russian bot or whatever. And so I try not to waste my time, just, going over details that a person is not going to hear no matter how often I repeat them. But if you're a real person who is open to this information, then yeah, I will 100% engage with you on this. So Ola in the red, you think the Democratic Party needs to be disciplined by us? Okay. Do you vote in the primary? Do you work to elect other people in the primary besides the centrist Dems that you seem to have a problem with? And also, do you think that Democrats losing in general elections is, quote unquote, teaching them a lesson? Because I don't. I think that when they see the Republican Party winning elections, they think we need to be more like that to win elections. That's what happened in the 90s. That's the reason why the Democratic Party became so corporate-friendly neoliberal in the 90s, is because they were getting their asses kicked for 12 years by the Republican Party. 12 fucking straight years, the Republican Party running the table. Losing elections does not push them to the left. Losing primaries pushes them to the left. So yeah, I always advocate voting for better over worse. And, I got to be honest, if you hear me say all this and you still think that not voting is the move, it's kind of sus to me, in my opinion. But, if you're open, I'm open, man. So yeah, I just got to put my misgivings out there just in case, because, when somebody then turns around and calls me a cock, I like to be able to say I called it, but I'm open. I'm still open, my man. That's what I'm doing here. Let's see here. I am a primary organizer and have campaigned for 45 years. I'm so happy to hear that. Ola in the red, that's amazing, man. But do you still vote for Democrats in the general? I think that's the most important thing. Pedanter says, love my LGBT community, but they're being weaponized by the right. Dems need to adjust to win. I don't agree with that, Pedanter. The Republican Party, the right, is going to weaponize anything that we do. If we abandon the LGBTQ community, they will weaponize that against us. And they will tell that community that we are not there for them. We do not have their back. But if we go and support them, then they will tell people that the trans community is all a bunch of pedophiles and that we like it when children get molested, and that's all because of our support for the LGBTQ community. The key is not to acquiesce to the Republican talking points. The key is to activate individuals like me and you to spread the correct narratives as opposed to the false narratives that the Republican Party is saying. Again, the Democratic Party is at a massive information disadvantage, and it is only people like you and me that correct that. Because the Democratic Party could come up with the most perfect messaging strategy of all time, and it will get twisted and turned and lied about, and those narratives will be pushed by the billionaires. And everything that all the work the Democratic Party did will get completely drowned out. It is up to us. We are the ones who have to do this work. And I know it sucks. I would much rather not do this work. I got fucking movies waiting for me to watch. I got Andor waiting for me. But I'm here doing the work because I think it is the right thing to do. And I think it's the only thing that we can do. I think it's the way that we get out of this fucking shit. Zon Z Danavage says that's all the shit that they spewed and people ate it all up. It's so sad and scary. It is sad and scary. That's why we do the work, Let's see here now, and are with us. We need the other side to win. That does not match the polling, Pedanter. We lost a lot of the demographics, the coalition that that makes up the Democratic Party's winning coalition because of lies that the Republican Party was telling about the economy, about the fact that we are going to become a richer nation through tariffs. We're going to become a richer nation by not funding Ukraine. And that Trump is going to bring down inflation and he's going to end these wars on day one. And so there are not a lot, but a statistically significant portion of the Black community, the Latino community, the female community, and the LGBTQ community who defected. The young community, it is. Again, I cannot stress this enough. If we just expect the truth to be the thing that saves us, we will lose. Because the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working in league with them have a fucking stranglehold on our information environment. And so no matter what we do online, they will win. We have to do this work as individuals. We have to do this fucking phone tree style where we organize and recruit and grow, and we have to do it in person, and not waste our time, arguing with bots and, paid trolls on the internet. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Ola in the Red says, of course I do. I'm more drawn to critiquing systems than individuals, though. I'm down with that, Ola in the Red. Part of my ethos on here is that people think that the Democratic Party is worse than it actually is, and people think the Republican Party is better than it actually is. That Democrats never get any credit, and that Republicans never get any blame. I have no problem with criticizing any politician, be they on your side or not, and criticizing the Democratic Party for their faults. But I also think that it is equally important that we ring that bell. Because when people hear the criticisms and they don't hear, but Republicans are worse, or they don't hear, but, we also did X, Y, and Z, that was amazing, then they come away thinking like both parties are the same, nothing ever gets done, there's no difference between the two parties, what difference does it make, who I vote for, who I don't vote for, my life's going to continue going down the gutter, et cetera, et cetera. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Gigi says, if you ever looked at streaming channels, there are dozens of Fox News channels. That is accurate. Jay Holt says, we're technically under maritime law. Trump is moving us back to the law of the land. That does not seem accurate at all. David Haley says, I give up. Half of USA just handed us over. I'm done. It wasn't half. It was only 23%. David Haley. And, the game is not over. We can do the work to get out of this. We are not cooked yet. And the more people that do this work, the less cooked we are. And we can get uncooked, We can be fucking rare as hell, if you forgive me for torturing the metaphor. Let's see here. Jay Holt says he's not ignoring the Constitution. He's the only president to actually hang it in the Oval Office. All right, so you're just here to spread misinformation, so you're out of here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Rhonda Owen says, I like Republican Town Hall where the constituents are holding the politicians accountable. I love that. I love that also, Rhonda Owens, and I love the Democrats that are out there holding town halls where the Republicans are too scared to go out and do town halls. That in-person work is exactly what I'm talking about, And so, yeah, do it, guys. Do the work. Join me. Don't make me do it all by myself. Let's see here. BB Fan says, did you see Buttigieg's interview from the right side this week? I did not. That's Andrew Schulz's podcast, right? Or was there another one? I think Pete Buttigieg is a great messenger, and so even though he's a little bit more of a centrist than I am, I think he is a net positive on what do you call it, on the political discourse. All right, how long have I been streaming for? Yeah, it's been about an hour. All right, I'm going to do something a little bit different today, guys, and I'm going to maybe do a second stream, so I'm going to cut this one a little bit short. Also, the hotel is knocking on my door because they think that I need to check out when that is inaccurate. I just need to recheck back in. So I'm going to get out of here, but maybe I'll be on later today, guys. Keep a lookout. If I was not able to answer your question here, then my DMs are open. You can send me an email through my website, join my Patreon, be a subscriber, all that good shit. And have an excellent weekend, everybody. Do the work. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye.